Speaking of the Red Rifle, we will be starting on Thursday for the Bears as they take on the Detroit Lions, who have played on Thanksgiving Day since 1934. I am an old man, but I have not seen most of those games. The first one I remember, though, is against the Bears in 1980, and it is not a happy memory. In fact, it is one of the reasons I've always hated the Chicago Bears, even after I moved there back in 1998 or 97. The Lions had a 14-point fourth quarter lead that they coughed up, allowing the Bears to tie in regulation. Overtime, Lions lost the toss in the Silverdome and kicked off to David Williams, who ran back the opening overtime kickoff, 95 yards for a touchdown, ruining the 7-year-old's Thanksgiving. It was the worst Thanksgiving ever. I will never forget David Williams. I'll never forget that fucker running down the field, giving me indigestion. So I've held that against the Bears for the rest of my life, and I will never let go of that. But yeah, I don't really know how to project this game. You've got Andy Dalton, which is certainly better than any quarterback that the Lions could be throwing out there. But the Bears are coming in a 5-game losing streak, an embattled coach. This is
a lost clubhouse. I mean, yeah,
it's a mess. I did hear the stat. This is the worst Thanksgiving Day records, both teams combined, since 1987. They're 3-1, and I forget what it is, how many losses they have. 3-1, of course, because of the tie. The Lions have the tie. So, it's Thanksgiving football. I love Thanksgiving football, but this is going to be a shit show. Two teams that are completely inept. Hopefully the Lions can pull it out, but I'm not thinking. I'm not confident about anything, even with the Bears in complete peril. Especially after watching the Lions last week against the Cleveland Browns, possibly the other saddest franchise in sports. Although they've turned it around in the last year or two, they did not look great.
No, the Lions covered in that game. Yeah. Easy.
The Baker Mayfield is clearly not himself. He's dealing with some injuries, and they've got injuries all over the place there too. But they were able to, of course, beat the Lions. A lot of strange things in that game. The Lions did lose the Edmund Fitgerald Trophy, or the Rust Belt, as I would like the championship of Cleveland and Detroit to be.
How long has that trophy been around?
I don't think it's been around long. Probably as long as the victory cannon for Central Michigan and Western Michigan that I brought up a couple weeks ago. That's been around since 2008. I think this is a made-up trophy that it's not really real. I'm not sure exactly where it started, but the Lions had a couple bright spots. Well, it was the debut of TB12, as Jared Goff was benched for Tim Boyle. Unfortunately, it was not the TB12 Tom Brady that you've heard of, or even Terry Bradshaw may have been a better option. But Tim Boyle came in and threw for a total of 77 yards, which you might remember from last week. That was also Jared Goff's total passing yards. He actually threw for 114 yards, but they subtract sack yardage. So Jared Goff also ended up with 77 yards. So 2 weeks in a row, Lions have 77 yards passing, which is quite odd. The running game is still working, though. DeAndre Swift ran for 136 yards and 14 carries, which is just crazy, and a touchdown. So the running game's working, partly because the offensive line is mostly doing its job. I saw a stat this week. Penei Sewell, rookie, left tackle, right tackle, what have you. In his last 5 games, there have been 7 pass blocking snap. Oh, I'm sorry. There have been 174 pass blocking snaps. and he has allowed only 5 pressures on those 174 and 0 sacks. So that's a pretty impressive stat for a rookie tackle that the Lions are pretty much placing their hopes on to be the centerpiece of their awesome offensive line for quite some time. So there's a lot of positives. I mean, obviously they only scored 10 points, so there's some negatives, and most of Detroit is focusing on Coach Dan Campbell, Danimal Cannibal, that I like to call him. Some questionable play calling, and typically I stay away from play calling or criticizing play calling because I don't know what the fuck I would do as a play caller. I'm nowhere close to an offensive coordinator. Dan Campbell took over the play calling duties 2 weeks ago, and so that's led to a lot of talk about specifically play calling, whether he's qualified to do it or not, and comparing it to how Adam Lind, offensive coordinator, was doing earlier in the season, which wasn't that great considering they were 0-8 under him. At least Dan Campbell has a tie as an offensive coordinator, but so he's coming under great scrutiny for his play calling. And, there's 60 to 80 play calls every game. They're going to fuck some up. The problem is the philosophy behind the play calling is something I will criticize. And I'm starting to question that with Dan Campbell. The first one that comes to mind that everyone brought up was a 3rd and 14 call in the fourth quarter while the Lions were trailing. They run a draw play, and it's almost like you're giving up when you run a fucking draw play on 3rd and 14.
Right.
Unless the idea is you're in 2-down territory. You're going to go for it on 4th down. And that's the philosophy I wouldn't have a problem with, since they were obviously able to run the ball and were very much struggling throwing the ball. There's some logic to that, where you do try a draw play and an obvious passing down. And then, hopefully you get close and you're going to run it on 4th or throw a pass on 4th, whatever you have to do. Problem is they punted on 4th down after the 3rd and 14 draw play, which it just makes 0 sense. It boggles the mind. And that's where I'm struggling to understand Dan Campbell's logic and starting to question his philosophies. The other egregious error in my mind, and I actually wrote this down. I'm getting to the point. I'm such a amateur podcast nerd that I am taking notes during the game. I actually wrote down as it was happening, like, why is Dan Campbell kicking a field goal with 3 minutes to go as they were down 6? They had 4th and 1 inside the 20, and they had DeAndre Swift running for 136 yards on 14 carries. He was averaging nearly 10 yards a carry. And he was scared to go for it on 4th and 1, and they opted for the field goal. And it's like, well, that's how you lose games, and that's exactly how they lost the game. He was trusting his typically porous defense to get him the ball back with 3 minutes to go, and it did not happen. Nick Chubb just ran out the clock basically on him. I mean, you could see it coming in that moment, and so that, again, like, the play calls themselves, you don't know everything that's going on. You don't know personnel. You don't know if somebody's dealing with an injury in the last minute before that play was called. You don't know a hash mark, decides certain things, where the ball's at. So there's many, many things going on in there that we'll never be privy to. That's why I avoid thinking that I'm smarter than everyone on the field. But I do question the philosophy, at least. And I think you're seeing a head coach kind of trying to find his footing in the NFL that doesn't really know what he's doing. He was famous in the first several weeks for being ultra aggressive to a fault, where the risk versus reward was not worth being so aggressive. Now you're kind of seeing he almost got his hand slapped by being burned so many times by being too aggressive. And now he's being ultra conservative to a fault. So he's kind of swinging wildly to opposite ends of the spectrum, and needs to find that happy medium. And I hope he does. Cause I mean, I like Dan Campbell. I don't think he's a bad guy. I just think he's kind of out over his skis a bit. I wouldn't be surprised to see Adam Lind take over play calling again, or have Dan Campbell just relinquish control of that, because it might be too much for him. So,
I mean, I would say maybe they should go back to Adam Lind playing calling, since you had 77 yards passing the last 2 weeks.
Well, that was with injured Jared Goff and some guy named Tim Boyle throwing the ball. So those might be the issues. And I mean, can anyone outside of Lions beat reporter and most hardcore fans name one Lions wide receiver right now? They're definitely hurting. So the good news is the running game is working despite all those inept passing game. So
how's the punting game? I haven't heard any punting updates.
I don't have any punting stats this week, but yeah, they've been leading the league in all sorts of punting stats. So we've got a good one there in Jack Fox. So I'm happy about that. But the best news of the week is that the Texans won a game. So the Lions are now in sole possession of last place in the NFL and the first pick in the NFL draft in 2022. They can actually win a game and not at this point and not jeopardize that number one pick. They would still be the number one overall pick, as they have now clinched their fourth consecutive losing season.
Wow, congratulations.
Yeah, so there's that. So that is how I will leave our Lions conversation for the week.